I'm Sam Dubé. I'm here for the Ottawa Book Expo with sci-fi and fantasy author Claudiu Murgan. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I take it as a matter of pride. I want to honor your name. So, Claudiu, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
I've graduated computer. I have a computer background from Romania, and I came to Canada in 1997. I've been very active in the science fiction movement back home. I used to organize events, attend all kind of sci-fi conventions in the US or Europe. I really like the genre, and I've been writing since I was 11 years old. So it was kind of ingrained in what I do and who I am. Unfortunately, soon after I arrived to Canada, I got involved into the day-to-day grind, and I kind of lost touch with my inner soul and with what I love to do, to write. And I also attached that event with the fact that at one point I attended a book signing with Terry Goodkind, the famous fantasy writer. And I woke up to him and I asked him to, sign my book. And also the next question was, when did you start writing? And he said at 45 years old. And my first thought was, oh my God, so old. I was 27 at that time. And somehow I think God punished me for that ungodly thought, because for the next 19 years I wasn't able to write anything related to sci-fi or speculative fiction or fantasy. So when I was about to turn 45, that creative juice came back to me, and I started with an old idea, or an idea I had back when I was 17 years old, and that developed into the decadence of our souls. So I don't know if it was a coincidence or, God said, it's enough for you. You've been dried for 19 years. Now it's time for you to blossom and get back,
That's right. Take your true calling, right?
Yes.
So I had heard in another interview that actually you had used the title Decadence of Our Souls in a previous work when you were a teenager. And it was your mother that found the notebook and asked you, should I throw this out? And you're like, no, keep it. And you end up using that the title of your first book in 2017 called The Decadence of Our Souls. Can you tell us a little bit about what may have inspired you to put pen to paper or fingertips to keyboard at age 45? Can you delve into that a little bit? What was your inspiration? What was your motivation?
I received a photograph in the mail by Gregory Colbert. I don't have it close to me here. It's a kneeled child reading from a book in front of a kneeled elephant. So I had that photograph in my cubicle at work, and I kept watching it and looking at it and trying to understand what's the connection between these two individuals. The sensitive animal and entity, which is the elephant, and very empathic, and the child. So I started writing down ideas, developing a plot. So after several weeks of writing down this type of potential ideas, developing the plot, I said, you know what, this can become a book. And I used that idea from when I was 17 years old of what will happen if all the souls will be called upon by God. Are they all have to be pure souls, or God will be so good that he doesn't matter? He won't make a distinction based on our facts here on Earth or on a planet, which I imagined. So I combined these two, and in the end, Decadence of Our Souls came to fruition.
Now, I've heard of this idea being used in sci-fi before. I think notably in some Christian film. I think it was called Rapture or something about souls being called, and then the remaining souls had to fight it out on Earth. This was done more than once. But what makes the decadence of our souls different in terms of the underlying spirituality? Because I know you consider yourself to be quite spiritual, and I want to understand, and our fans want to understand what is the underpinnings of your plot of your book.
I'm using different type of symbolism. So I'm using the tree of life, but this time it's a double tree of life. One for which will birth boys, and one which will give birth to girls. And they come forward into a community where children and elephants communicate telepathically. In this case, the teachers, the elephants are the teachers, not other humans. So I'm trying to maintain this and put forward this connection between us and nature, that the fact we are one, and we have to understand our place in this ecosystem called Gaia. So they're supposed to be pure, they're supposed to come back over and over again to reach their goals. They are born into castes, builders, writers, commoners, and architects, and writers, sorry. And they have to write a certain number of novels or poems during their lifetime, which is quite short. And so they age very fast. And there are also special souls who found enlightenment. Like in our days, people can find enlightenment, can enrich their souls. They have a special relationship with the divinity. So these special souls come back through these trees or through different through special places on the planet to help their brothers and sisters to enrich their souls, enlighten themselves, and stay with either the divinity or also come back as they came back as well. And on the other side, you have the decadent world who only think at the instant gratification. They are very big again on drugs, booze, any type of pleasure. And when one of these special souls is being kidnapped, he's trying to change them, to tell them that there is a special entity, a certain entity out there who can listen to them, who can help them develop as human beings. But because these guys are technologically advanced, they think that if they develop a technology and they have a switch on and off on their brain, they can find this state of bliss and they can enhance the pleasure. But that's not the case. You have to really feel, you really have to go inside. You have to understand the power of the words you speak, the vibration of your thoughts. So this child is trying to teach them all these things, but they don't learn. In the process, he's being changed as well. He's being hurt. And he is not successful of what his initial goal was.
He's being changed and hurt by the decadence?
By the people, by the decadent people, yes.
Right.
Who don't understand him, and they just in the end use him as a exchange currency for their pleasures. So the book ends with the fact that most of the people in this decadent world will be taken up in order for the world to be cleansed. Some of the children, normal children, remain behind, and the elephants might come and take over and start teaching them the same way they taught the children in the village. So that's why the fable is there, the symbolism is there, and it was used before, but I use different tools and different approach for the same message. We really have to improve ourselves as human beings, and it is my conviction that if we don't raise our consciousness to the next level, have a shift in our consciousness, what happens these days with the COVID-19 will happen over and over again, because we don't learn.
No, and in fact, we're doing a Skype interview because of the worldwide pandemic of COVID-19 at this time, isn't that right? So it sounds to me like you've got a conflict between enlightenment and decadence, and you're differentiating between the two, and it may not be that obvious, especially when you're talking about a society where they can flip a switch and induce pleasure. And so could you talk to us a little bit more about the idea of what you feel enlightenment is? You mentioned a little bit about the animal wisdom. You mentioned about the elephants being wise and teaching, and the child teaching, and then humans being removed from the earth to cleanse it. But an enlightened human then would be what, according to Claudiu Murgan?
I am a follower of a certain, yoga branch, but again, the same mentality and the same concepts you can find in the Bible. And this is a very delicate subject.
Yes.
With certain people. And if you tell them that the Bible talks about reincarnation, they will just disregard that. They will turn around and walk away from you. They just don't want to listen. So even for the people who believe in Trinity, they can also believe in reincarnation. To me, they are not exclusive. And a enlightenment human being is someone who can find himself internally, who can create that connectivity with the divinity, who can really feel that he is at a different level of understanding, and he doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. Because people who, like the atheists and people who don't believe, usually say, this cannot be true. This is not true because I cannot intellectually process it in my brain. And my answer is, these type of things cannot be explained. They have nothing to do with the intellect. They have nothing to do with the laws of physics. And I am not going to spend more time in trying to convince you, because if you don't have that experience yourself, no matter what I'm going to tell you, no matter what anyone will show you, nothing will convince you. So you really have to start meditating. You have to start doing the introspection yourself and see the signs. And not for a day or two, you really have to be committed to this type of process. Otherwise, nothing will happen and your beliefs won't change.
That's interesting. You considered a dynamic process. What's also interesting is that someone who graduated from a Romanian Polytechnical Institute with a background in engineering is saying, I can't explain these aspects. You either experience it and know it, or you don't. And if you don't have that experience, then there's nothing I can say to you that will push you over that realistic edge, or that realization, as I want to say. So this is really fascinating, and it seems like we share something in common. My background was originally math and physics, and then later medicine, and so I too consider myself a spiritual person, and I learned transcendental meditation when I was 6 years old. So yeah. But what I wanted to touch on also was your later book. I think we have some time to discuss this, Water Entanglement, and you mentioned a protagonist in The Decadence of Our Souls, a child, correct?
Right.
And in Water Entanglement, I think you mention that water is itself a character. Water is itself a personality. And this is very interesting because we know so very little about the properties of water, and water being polar molecules, and there being about 9 different kinds of ice depending on the conditions upon which the ice is formed, and this and that. But when I heard Masaru Emoto speak at a conference, I can't remember if it was the late 90s, early 2000s, through his daughter as a translator, and talking about human intention potentially altering the crystallization of water and producing beautiful symmetrical crystals versus asymmetrical, rather displeasing looking crystals. And he had used science, excuse me, he had used auditory energy, human intentional energy, thought. He called it thought energy, and I believe you're aware of all this, and you incorporated this into your book. So can you speak about water entanglement for us a little bit?
I use Masaru Emoto's research in my book. Also, many other books like Carly Nudai, Water Codes, Rainy Hiley, The Water Code, Nina Montano's Water Is. There are so many authors who are fascinated by water, and they try to explain some of the phenomenons. And I mean, water has 60 anomalous properties. Imagine that. And even recently, through Greg Braden's interviews, I understand that it was proven that the energy field around the molecule of water is where the information is being stored. And in my book, water kind of wakens up. She understands that we are pillaging the earth, and she has to take measures. And she changes her molecular structure to an acidic one, so the pH is being modified. And people who are in places, sacred places like the Ganges or the Jordan River, are starting to be affected by the changes in water. And this is what people will call in 2055 the awakening of water. A lot of atmospheric events start to happen out of nowhere in downtown Toronto. Planes bringing the CEO of oil and gas companies, which are mainly the main polluters in today's world, are being brought down by water in the shape of a tornado or hurricane. So these are warning signals from water to us that, guys, you have to stop. Otherwise, I'm going to keep pounding on you. I'm going to bring death just because you have to stop and understand your mistakes. And I also try to bring solutions, like what happens if United Nations will reach an understanding with all the countries and with the big corporations to stop the fracking, to stop the oil and gas exploration, and the water bottling companies will stop depleting the aquifers. And all this comes under a United Nations resolution, and everyone will be compensated for the loss of profits. Of course, their bottom line is very important for them. Otherwise, they cannot get their millions of dollars in salaries. So I also, come with solutions where certain projects will be funded from the UN level down, and that will affect only. I mean, we talk about pollution. We talk about pollution remediation, education, which is very important, especially in places like India and China as well, because mainly. Rivers in Asia are the ones who are polluting the oceans these days, like the plastic, and so we have to be very aware of that. So that's why I decided that water has to be a character in my book, and that also led me into bringing forward the issue of indigenous people all over the world. So I bring in natives from North America and from Hawaii, and their fight with the big corporations. So that also translates into the sequel of Water Entanglement, Crystal Cloud, which I hope to launch in August, September of this year.
More about Crystal Cloud. I wanted to ask you what your next project was, without spoiling anything.
So, in water entanglement, healing is done through a combination of water and crystal. So the water structure will seep through the crystal will be decoded, and that the person who gets the crystal implanted will get healed. And what I'm talking about, the spiritual leader of Hawaii, Hakuna Lapau, which was tried to be assassinated, and he survives the attempt, and he comes back. But the neurosurgeon who developed this crystal technology will try to apply it to other medical cases. But of course, there are forces which are pulling back and forth, and they want this technology to be used for entertainment. You know, going back to the idea from the decadence, because these days they all want to be online, they want to be connected. They heard about the cloud, so through these crystals, they get the crystals implemented, and then they can connect to the cloud. They can record their memory to the cloud, their thoughts and their dreams to the cloud. But at the same time, there is another catch, going back to the consciousness and going back to the how we can become better human beings. They realize that their thoughts are switching to the positive side and to the much more meaningful side of who they are or who we are and what's our purpose, life purpose. And they understand their mistakes. So this is where I live it, that people slowly, especially the figures, the known figures, the actors, the politicians, and people who are kind of doing all the harm these days, not the actors, but the politicians, are changing their mentality. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because we understand that even if we cannot create or develop a language for water to bridge the evolutionary gap between us and water, at least through the crystals, water will be able to read us all the time, read our feelings and our minds, and understand that we turn around to the positive side, and we are not going to harm the earth anymore.
Yeah, and in fact, there's been some talk in the more esoteric circles about how humans have crystalline properties, certain organs having crystalline properties. I think you mentioned yourself about the pituitary gland, the pineal gland, the third eye, so to speak, and the fact that the human body is more than 90% water also. And, if Emoto is correct, I mean, this has huge implications, right? And especially for spirituality. We talk about, in the Bible, Jesus blessing water, being baptized and by John the Baptist, and that it affecting all water. And there may be more truth to that than we realize, right? When a holy being is physically, touched by this water, then it changes all water. It could change all water, couldn't it? So I just find it so fascinating how you have this more technical background, and yet your passion is one of evolution of consciousness. And I find that very endearing. I feel the same way. Is there anything else you would like to mention? Perhaps some commonality between your works, starting at age 45, how you've matured since you were that 11-year-old boy who started, finding value in fantasy and sci-fi. How have you evolved as a person, as a soul?
Recently, and for some might be a little bit shocking, but I will come out very soon with another video where I explain this in more depth. I decided to experiment plant medicine. And I did that. I did 3 ceremonies already, and it was quite transformational for me. The first one was quite amazing. It was done outdoors, and now I know what it means to be one with nature. So when I showed love to the plants around me, they showed me love back. They really, it's an amazing experience. So I'm preparing for a 17-day trip to Peru in June if everything goes well and nothing gets canceled. And the messages I received through these ceremonies is that I really have to embrace more the concept of God and Christ, and help people step on their spiritual path, found their life purpose. And last year I developed a workshop called "Refocus a Pathless Life Through Deepened Spirituality," which I presented only in front of a handful of people. But with all these events, I really want to transfer that online and offer this type of services online. I mean, corporate workshops or private sessions or online workshop. It's a 4-step process I developed based on the decadence of our souls and based on the story of Rakash. And I take people through, the story and reality, how they can identify themselves in today's world and how they can improve their lives. Because no matter what we do, no matter how much money we have, and how much, clutter we have in our life, the most important thing is to find ourselves, to find our spiritual self. If we find that, we are going to be happy no matter what. So people usually say, oh, I'll be happy when I'm going to get this type of money, when I'm going to get this car. No, you have to be happy at any time. And all these small, let's say, pleasures or gifts you want to have in your life, they will come. But you really have to be happy with them. And I'm very fortunate to be in contact with people which are on their own spiritual path. And also, again, one of the messages I received through this embrace of the concept of God and Christ is to start a show called Spiritually Inspired. So right now I'm preparing this show. I'm sending out invites to people who are well known or people who are less known, but they have a very strong spiritual belief and a spiritual process on a daily life. I want to start interviewing them. Will be a show, a weekly show, and I will announce that shortly. I already have 3 or 4 guests confirmed. Some of them are authors, some of them are scientists, and talking about how one can transition from a technical background to a spiritual background. Just think at Greg Braden. He's an anthropologist. Think at Hank Wasselman. He's an anthropologist, now a shaman, Hawaii. Even Dr. Dispezza, he was a doctor.
Yes,
and he transitioned.
Chiropractor, that's right.
Exactly. So many people understand that we start our lives on a certain path because we are forced by circumstances. But moving forward, we have to really find ourselves, identify who we are, and act accordingly, because otherwise we're going to end this existence unfulfilled. And we have to come back again.
It's interesting because I think you just, in one way, synopsized water entanglement, because you present the problem, water awakens in 2055, and then you present a bunch of solutions to that problem as well. So, like, I think you mentioned once that you wanted to think of it as a manifesto, and I can see that now from the way you're talking, and it's almost as if you're now enacting that in people's lives by giving them a chance to attend your workshop and your retreat, and to map themselves out, discover where they are, and to apply some changes. So now, acting as devil's advocate, you mentioned about Peru, and so when we think about life-altering and Peru, we think about peyote. So you know what's fascinating about a lot of these entheogens is that we have receptors in our anatomy and physiology that it almost can't be a coincidence that they fit so perfectly with some of these substances, like some of these mushrooms that produce altered states of consciousness. It's almost as if there's a symbiotic relationship, and that the mushrooms probably predated humans. So did we grow and evolve along with the mushrooms, or vice versa, or at the same time? Do you know what I mean? Like there's this relationship that could predate humankind as we know it, and that our nervous systems and the rest of our physiology evolved alongside these catalysts, I guess you would call them, or these mechanisms. It further confirming that there is a big picture. There's an interdependence of all life on Earth and Gaia, as you mentioned. What do you feel about this?
For sure, definitely is something. Everything is connected, and the indigenous people of the Amazon think that. Excuse me.
You're a popular guy.
Uh, Sorry about that.
No problem, no problem.
The indigenous people of the Amazon think that there is a plan for any disease that is out there, and there are about 80,000 species or plants in the Amazon. And imagine someone got the message that only two plants have to be mixed in order to get this type of effect and connect to the divinity and get this type of clear messages. The idea is that you really have to act on the messages you receive. You cannot just, you can disregard them if you want, but that won't help you. And I can tell you that I received a message on my first ceremony related to my family, my wife in particular, and I said, I cannot do that. I cannot just share with her something I did 10 years ago. Wasn't that bad, but I said, no, I don't want to share that. In my third ceremony, that message came back so powerful. And it so said, you're going to break a cycle if you are honest with your wife and with yourself. And I had to do it. So it was painful for a couple of days, but then everything has changed. And I feel much more relieved, much more lighter because of that decision. So I think it's up to each individual to decide if this is good for him or her. Because some people are afraid that that they're gonna go crazy or they're gonna die or things like this, which is not the case. But you really have to make that decision that if you go through this experience, in the end, you make a promise to yourself to implement the message you receive.
So, Claudiu, you're Romanian descent. So, in my experience, a good majority of Romanians are Greek Orthodox. Is that true?
Christian Orthodox.
Christian Orthodox? Okay. So, were you originally raised as a Christian Orthodox?
Yes.
And so, how do you reconcile the Christian Orthodoxy with your current spiritual beliefs? And do they manifest your older beliefs or modified beliefs? Do they manifest in your work?
So, to be honest with you, it's still a struggle to really put something like to say it's carved in stone is like this or like that. I believe in God. I believe in Christ. And as I mentioned before, even through the other teachings I went through, they believe in Trinity. Even the Hindus believe in Trinity, which in the end is connected to God. But what the Christian Orthodox don't believe into is reincarnation. Right. And this is the only aspect I struggled with. And when I discuss with my friends, these are, again, it's an aspect we just don't agree upon. But other than that, I don't think I've shifted that much from the way I was raised. And even if there are Christians out there who go to church, they believe in reincarnation, but they don't accept or they won't say it in front of the priest or in front of their friends, just because it doesn't go with the norms. And it's a little bit different, and they really don't want to stick out their neck.
Well, what do you feel reincarnation is? Like, what is your personal belief in reincarnation? Because I've heard of a few.
I think, I don't know if there are different ideas or concepts about reincarnation. Is like you live this life and you have attachments. And as long as you, at the end of the life, you still have attachments, like you love chocolate or you drink or you like to smoke. These are attachments. So it's like a craving, or you are addicted to something in particular, or you desire to become a millionaire. So if at the end of life you don't have a deeper connectivity to the divinity, which in the end will kind of clean your slate from all these attachments, you're going to have to come back again, reincarnate again, to deal with that particular attachment. So you can even reach that state of bliss, be enlightened. But if the message is you go back to help other people understand their life purpose and understand their goals and help them get rid of these attachments, then you come back. But again, you are pretty much an avatar, like Jesus, Buddha, Krishna. In different religions there are different avatars, and you help your brothers and sisters to get rid of these attachments and become better people.
So then, where does the idea of past life experiences fit in for you? Because you meet many people. It's a phenomenon where they believe they've had a past life and can recount memories, and this is where sometimes under relaxation techniques or hypnosis they will divulge things. But then you go to a past life conference and you meet 5 other women who claim to have been Cleopatra, for instance, or 3 other guys who claim to be Napoleon, or as I've encountered at conferences, I've met people claiming to be the Virgin Mary, multiple and multiple who claim that they had been Jesus. So how do you reconcile that? Were they all the same person, or are these just connections through space and time, perhaps souls and energies resonating and sharing common emotional states, which is more what I believe. So how would you reconcile this?
Some of them are not legit, in my opinion. They all have, maybe they got their information from people who were not legit, people who just try to please them. But I also heard about multiple cases of, Mary Magdalene or Cleopatra, or examples Mary of Scots. So depends on who is giving you this information. And also you really have to, if you are at that, you have a high vibrational state, you'll know for sure what your reincarnations were, what age, what time frame were you reincarnated. And usually people who have this type of sensibility and vibration, they don't come out and say, I was this, I was that, I've been in this position, or they are quite contained with themselves, and they again going back to, they don't have to prove anything to anyone. So I agree that not every single claim is a true claim, and you really have to go back internally and ask yourself, is this a real piece of information? How can I vouch for this information? Is my intuition telling me that this is true? And also, if you find advice from someone else, you really have to check if that person has the right credentials, and he's an empath, he's a channeler, or whatever he might be, a guru, if you're dealing with someone from India, and you have to check that person's credibility in order to be able to claim that you've been incarnated as this particular person or in that particular time frame.
Question I would have regarding reincarnation is, if it in fact occurs, then why would we be restricted to reincarnating to other beings on Earth? What about reincarnating to beings from an near infinite number of worlds, of any kind, with different lifespans or completely different ways to cognize the universe or perceive what we believe to be reality? Why would we be limited here? Is there something that is keeping souls, for instance, if you conceive of a soul, relegated to being earthbound, or would being reincarnated on another world consist of moving up to a higher vibration, ridding oneself of all worldly, earthly attachments, and then moving on to attachments from the Andromeda Galaxy, for instance? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what is there anything?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you from what I read. I can tell you that I experienced something like this, or I tell you from a personal experience. No, so it's just from other sources, and one of them is the Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda.
Yes, yes.
So he also explains that yes, we can. I mean, these souls, which are incarnated as human beings, can reincarnate somewhere else on other planets, and in fact, physical form looks like is specific to Earth. On other planets, they are still on the energy as energy forms. They don't need to be in physical bodies. And it looks like again what I read, because the life on Earth is so harsh, and we have to experience so many challenges. Some of the souls want to come back. They want to experience how it is to be human. And again, when one soul goes up, they might decide to come back in a different body, or they decide to go on a different planet and try different experience. So again, if someone else other than you will hear me talking like that, they might try to put me in a straitjacket, or I don't know, but
you're safe from me. You're safe from me.
This is again what I read and what I heard from some sources which are pretty credible.
Okay. Well, thank you for answering that. And so I feel like I could talk to you forever. To synopsize the themes of Decadence of Our Souls, go. What are they?
Becoming a better human being through introspection, meditation. Try to put aside instant gratification and cluttering your life with useless things.
Who would enjoy your book, and who would you want to enjoy your book?
Anyone who wants to see how it is to step on a spiritual path, because in various chapters I hint to, start by thinking positive, talk positive, because words and thoughts have vibrations which can influence you and you can influence the people around you. Start meditating 10-15 minutes a day, and then try to go back and see how you feel. If you feel change, if you see your thoughts being focusing on something else rather than the subjects you were focusing before, and also go and listen to and read positive things. Read something which is different than what you read yesterday. Challenge yourself in on stepping on the spiritual path, because in the end it will lead you to finding your life purpose.
Okay, I have an idea for you here. We recently celebrated Chinese New Year, and nobody talks about it being the year 4000, et cetera, because the Chinese tend to think more in terms of cycles. In fact, a lot of Eastern and Southeastern and Southern Asian cultures think in terms of cycles. With your technical knowledge and your belief in the fact that animal wisdom is kind of preeminent, and that humans need to rediscover this and relearn it and teach it to each other and rise to a higher level of understanding, getting along with everyone and living in harmony with Gaia, or the Earth consciousness. Would you consider maybe writing a work of fiction that takes place at different timelines simultaneously? So, for instance, I personally believe human history goes back a lot further than we realize at this point. But maybe writing something about 30,000 years ago, and a struggle that was occurring, and it has ramifications for today, and in our more technical society, but the themes are the same. The battle is the same, or it's a continuing battle that happens in maybe 2 or 3 different eras. I would love to read something written by you with that kind of structure, with that kind of narrative structure, and maybe having some more, shall we say, conventionally supernatural characters from the past, maybe some more elements, maybe what we would consider to be deities, or nature forces from the past, communicating with people like protagonists in today's world. I think there's some potential there, and I think you'd be the man to do it.
Thank you very much. I'll think about it. I have a couple of ideas for my next project after I finish Crystal Cloud. I have to, again, I'm trying to focus on this new show and the online workshop to see how those go. But writing will always be my hobby, more than hobby, in my heart. So I'll keep writing.
But you're not going to take another 18-year hiatus?
No,
No?
Learn my lesson.
You learned your lesson. Okay, great. Claudiu, is there anything else you would like to say? You've got a platform here, and I'd love to hear anything else that you have to say.
If people want to know more about me, they can go to claudiumurgan.com. They can listen to my previous interviews. They can go online and buy my books. They are both on audios on iTunes and Audible and ACX, and pretty much in any format. I attend various shows, and the events are listed on my website as well. And they can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I like to post videos as often as possible, weekly or bi-monthly. So they can stay in touch with me, or they can send me a direct email at claudiumurgan.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was an honor, Claudiu. Take care of yourself, and hopefully we'll be in touch in the future.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Are you a writer? Are you seeking to self-publish high-quality and mass-marketable books? Would you like to avoid the typical low-quality self-published book that generally sells less than 50 copies? Here are top 10 ways Agora will make your book look like a potential bestseller. AgoraPublishing.com services include: number 1, ISBN registration. 2, cataloging in publication or CIP registration. Number 3, books in print basic for Canada and the US. Number 4, books in print international to get your book sold with online booksellers internationally. Number 5, copy editing for basic grammar and typos. Number 6, substantive editing for style revamping and other consulting. Number 7, typesetting, layout, and graphic design essential for that professional look. Number 8, book cover design. Number 9, book website and author blog design along with search engine optimization, often just called SEO, and also search engine marketing, otherwise known as SEM. 10, AgoraPublishing.com even provides book distribution, agency services, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Go to AgoraPublishing.com today and find out how they can make you a great selling author. That's AgoraPublishing.com. AgoraPublishing.com.